This is Liberty Under Attack Radio, hosted by Shane and Matt. Your place for documented truth and where freedom is the only agenda. We must end the terror war.
And welcome to a very special edition of Liberty Under Attack Radio on the Freedom Phalanx Radio Network. LUA Radio is your place for voluntary, non-coercive transactions of enlightening information provided to you, the listener, at no cost. Unlike the rampant statism I'm sure most of you face in your day-to-day lives, we are here to provide you a beacon of hope, the true message of freedom. You can't be free with political rulers. Today is July 19th, 2015, and as always, we've got another extremely important topic to discuss. I'm your host, Shane Radliff, broadcasting from the communist state of Illinois, more specifically, Central Illinois. I'm joined by my co-host, Matt, from good old West Virginia. How are you doing this evening, man?
Going great. Good evening.
And once again, we'll be welcoming Kyle Rearden from the Last Bastille blog. He'll be joining us in just a few moments. The number to call in is 218-895-3818 or on Skype at FPRN Radio Live. We'd surely love to hear from you, so feel free to chime in. We're always busy here at LUA, doing our best to provide our listeners and readers with original content. First off, I released my newest article titled Adventures in Illinois Law, An Encounter with a Blue Coat. I was unlucky enough to have a dangerous encounter with a police extortionist. On a more positive note, I was able to put into action my training from role-playing police interrogations. Additionally, Matt released his newest article titled Anarchist Liberation from Honor Nationalism Days, which focuses on the 4th of July and Dependence Day. Matt also completed the final addition to his series on the Liberty Eagle fascist book group. All of these articles are available at libertyunderattack.com, along with the rest of our content. You can find all of the newest ones at the homepage. Next, I would like to remind our listeners again that I will be attending the Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest in Delton, Michigan on August 8th and 9th. I'm sure there's some of you in the Midwest that could attend, and I would highly recommend you do. Get away from statism for the weekend and mingle with liberty lovers. LUA will set up a booth, give away some free LUA gear, and hopefully conduct some interviews from the festival. And if you do end up going, keep a lookout for that poster behind you. That'll be on the booth. Come say hi if you do end up going. Additionally, on that Sunday, I will be hosting the first hour of LUA Radio on site, and details on that will be released as they become available. Again, that's August 7th to August 10th in Delton, Michigan, and surely hope to see some of you there. I'd like to take some time to plug the Liberty Under Attack YouTube channel as well. There have been many additions, including the Agor's Primer audiobook done by Kyle and I, as well as 2 documentaries by Ralph Epperson that he asked me to put up on the channel. In addition to that, there will be quite a few additions in the next month, especially from my attendance at the Midwest Peace and Liberty Fest. I'd certainly appreciate it if you would subscribe and share. Definitely appreciate that. That link is youtube.com/Liberty Under Attack. To save as much time for our interview this evening, we'll plow forward. The title for this broadcast is An Illusive Phantom of Hope, a Critique of Reformism. And, of course, the topic of discussion for tonight will be reformism. I'd first like to mention that the anthology, available in PDF format, and the audiobook for this collection of articles is available exclusively at libertyunderattack.com. The link will be in the FPRN chat, but for those of you listening to the archive or somewhere other than on the Listen Live page, that link is tinyurl.com/reformism. Again, tinyurl.com/reformism. Dissidents and activists have been stuck in bad habits for quite a long time. Those bad habits include voting, jury nullification, protesting, debating, running for public office, and more. These bad habits have been proven to be ineffective and a waste of our precious time, money, and efforts in our attempts at restoring our liberty. Tonight, we'll go through each individual aspect of reformism and debunk it in its entirety. This broadcast may anger you. This broadcast may leave some of you hopeless if you have never looked at the economic means. But there is a silver lining. This broadcast will provide you with actual, realistic, and effective solutions that we all can utilize in an honest attempt at restoring our liberty. I'll end with a quote from Samuel Konkin from his book, New Libertarian Manifesto, and its meaning will start to make sense as we progress through this broadcast. Quote, "It is part of the statist mystique to confuse the necessity of ends means consistency. It is thus the most crucial activity of the libertarian theorist to expose inconsistencies. Many theorists have done so admirably, but we have attempted and most failed to describe the consistent means and ends combination of libertarianism," end quote. So, Kyle, I want to welcome you back onto Liberty Under Attack Radio. It's been a while, but we're surely happy that you're back with us. How are you doing this evening?
Doing quite well. Howdy and laissez-faire. It's good to be back on with you, Shane.
Oh, definitely happy to have you. Definitely happy to have you. So, I guess before we get started and into this broadcast of reformism, why don't you provide the listeners with a brief history, because there's definitely a history there, on the anthology you just finished, and also kind of provide the ultimate conclusion before we start getting into each individual aspect of reformism.
Sure. Well, originally it all began with a conversation I had with none other than the famous Randy Mack of You Have Tread on Me Radio. When I told him how much I despised working within the system in order to change it, he replied by telling me that I should look at all the other methods and then turn each of those articles into a series. And so 3 years later, that's exactly what I've done.
Awesome. I'm definitely happy you got this finished, and definitely we're happy we're going to be doing this broadcast, because it's I've also despised the lame attempts, let's call them what they are, lame attempts at working inside the system and trying to adapt government to your liking or anything like that. So I guess a good place to start, let's make sure to define our terms here. Don't want people to get confused, and if they don't know the definition, then they might not understand where we're coming from. So let's go through some definitions here. So I guess, what's the definition for reformism?
Reformism, simply defined, is any attempt at working inside of the system in order to change it from within. In brief, reformism is applied collectivism.
Okay. All right. What is direct action?
Direct action is, well, to go back to Albert J. Knox, Our Enemy the State, direct action could quite simply be the economic means of making money, which is a vast and sundry topic all unto itself that should perhaps be saved for another time. But briefly defined, it's kind of everything else that reformism is not.
Okay. So do you have any, I guess, hypotheses as far as why more libertarians and dissidents are not using the economic means, and why they're still stuck on these failed political ones?
In large part, it is because they have been lied to. They have been told that the political means of making money, through various techniques that we will get to shortly here, are essentially that they work, at least to some degree. And I think there's something very important to keep in mind here, which is Hitchens' razor. Hitchens' razor says that he who makes the claim bears the burden of proof. Reformists make the claim that working inside the system in order to change it from within works, in much the same way that arguably infiltrating the KKK and turning it into the NAACP works. So my thesis here, I guess, is that using Hitchens' razor, what I've discovered is that the fact of the matter is that reformism has utterly failed to satisfy its burden of proof for demonstrating its very integrity, simply because it is strategically unsound for the cause of human liberty.
Indeed. I think it would be good to kind of start with a video from Larkin Rose called Offending Activists. Just a couple-minute clip here, but it will segue very nicely into the rest of this broadcast. Producer, please cue up clip 1.
Hey, this is Larkin Rose. I was going to title this video, Why There Is Hope. And it actually does end with some very positive, hopeful stuff. But first I have to offend and insult a lot of people. And to make it worse, the people I will be offending and insulting are very good people with very good intentions who are working very hard at what they believe in. So I'm sure this is going to win me tons of friends. And there's somebody out there, and it's your fault I'm doing this video today, and you know who you are. To get right to the point, most activism is completely worthless. In fact, it's worse than completely worthless. It accomplishes more harm than good. Again, I want to distinguish between good intentions and good results, because there are lots and lots of things that fall within the realm of activism. And I'm not saying all activism, but most of it actually does less than no good. And while I'm at it, I'll say I speak from experience. Many, many years ago, when I still believed in statism, I was politically active, and I campaigned, and I played those games, and I wrote to my congressman and did all that stuff. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit it now, but yeah, I did that too. And at the time, I really and truly believed that I was fighting the right fight. I was fighting against the beast. It only occurred to me many years later that actually I was feeding the beast lots and lots of fuel. So I don't make this video to be nasty at people. I do it because I don't want people's good intentions to be wasted on something that does less than no good. And I kind of wish back then somebody had straightened me out. Don't know whether I would have listened, but I wish somebody would have tried to straighten me out and say, yeah, all that voting and petitioning and all that fun stuff doesn't actually accomplish anything. And if you look throughout history at the people who have protested and had demonstrations and voted and ran for office and did petitions for this or that legislation or against this or that legislation, and if you look what they've accomplished, it's almost nothing. Very rarely there are actually exceptions, but for the most part, it's nothing. The people in power kept doing what they were doing, and the people protesting and petitioning and whining about it spent just huge amounts of time and effort and money.
Okay. All right. So let's get into some of these individual aspects of reformism, shall we, Kyle?
Please.
Okay. So the first one, writing your Congress critters. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the main problem here is that, well, there's several things. I'll try to be brief as best as I can. They're not constitutionally required to reply back to you. Let's kind of start there. I mean, you can write to them all you want, but they don't have a duty to write back. Also consider the ratio of representation. I discovered that in my calculations in 2013 that there was one Congress critter for every 455,519 U.S. citizens, and at least where I live, one Texan legislator for every 107,837 Texans. So you're dealing in terms of the hundreds of thousands of citizens for every legislature, both nationally and then, of course, as well as in Texas. I'm not sure about what the other 49 are, but I think that can kind of speak for itself. So I don't see how they could deal with that. So here's what I'm getting at. Imagine, if you will, they get hundreds of thousands of letters just from those who are registered voters. How could the Congress critters or other state legislators, how could they possibly plow through all of that and figure it all out? I mean, they can't. They're too overwhelmed. So what happened was that there was an automated process. And generally speaking, they don't even look at it because there's way too much. I mean, simply put, if legislators actually read, never mind responded, but even if they just read every single letter that came in, they would literally not be able to do their other duties, such as actually going down and voting on bills and so forth.
Indeed. And I think there's one point I want to mention here. We just heard a clip from Larkin Rose, but in his book, The Iron Web, it's a fiction story, but it's definitely a good book if you can get a hold of it. But he actually does mention that in there. The president got a letter from like a pro-gun organization, and he was like, well, just use the automated template and let me see it before we send it out so we don't piss anybody off or anything like that. So yeah, there definitely is there's definitely an issue with automated responses. It's very ingenuine. And just kind of shows you that even if they did want to read every single letter, it's just not feasible. Not feasible.
No, it's not.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to the next one?
Really, I mean, I guess the only exception is if you're a professional lobbyist, like a K Street lobbyist, a celebrity, or something along those lines. Then maybe writing a letter might be worth it. But if you're just the average Joe citizen, who I am addressing here tonight, no. The best you can expect is the legislative staff will just shoot you back a letter. a standard form letter saying thank you for your letter and so forth, and that's it. So no, you're not persuading anybody because it's not even meeting his eyes.
Yeah, and there's I know back when I only did this for like 2 hours because I realized how stupid it was. But there was some bill going through in Illinois regarding like a gun control, like a ban, like a limit on magazines, and you can email your congressman, and instead of having to like actually like get a like print out a piece of paper and send it back to you, it's just an automated response to your email. So that's I guess another facet of that.
Easier to ignore.
Yep, exactly. So, moving on. Mm-hmm. Writing a letter to the editor. Why does that not work?
Oh, this one. Yeah, a lot of people kind of misunderstand this. Okay, let's clear something up right from the beginning. Benjamin Franklin was able to write letters to the editor of the New England Courant under the alias Silas Dogood and portrayed himself as a very opinionated widow. And that's just one of many examples. If you look at, for instance, the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, those original letters were published under pseudonyms. So we've lost something very important to the American experience, namely the ability to pseudonymously write and get letters to the editor published in mainstream newspapers. The problem now is the privacy infringements on privacy. And again, if the audience doesn't believe me, just try and do this. Try writing a letter to the editor and determine for yourself. You don't even need to listen to me or give me any credibility necessarily. But what you want to look for is whether or not the newspaper replies back and says, hey, we need to know your legal name, your physical address, your telephone number, and perhaps some other details about your personal life that we have no business knowing. And that will tell you a lot about where the freedom to pseudonymously write and publish letters to the editor is in America today.
Yeah, that's definitely a major issue. Anything else before we move forward?
The only other thing I'd say is consider also who would be reading these letters to the editor, even if you do get it published somehow. I hate to say this, but arguably it would be more effective to write a letter to your Congress critter.
Yeah, that's true because they do choose which ones they put in the newspapers. So if you're speaking about anything important, and depending on who's reading it, it might not even get published at all, anyways. So even if you do get through the privacy aspect of it, you probably still will get denied.
Yeah, and not even reach the readers. Yeah,
exactly. So, what about petitioning?
Oh, this. I remember a couple years back, I think it was after El Presidente got reelected, people were doing the online petitions for some sort of efforts. I think a few of them had to do with secession or things along those lines. And, actual petitions, petitions are actually legal, formal legal documents. It's not some website where you just, click and send it off like an email. Petitions are constitutionally recognized in both the 1787 United States Constitution as well as the 1876 Texas Constitution. The idea is to petition the government for redress of grievances. And it is true that both governments recognize the pre-existing right of the citizenry to petition the government and so forth. However, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, so to explain it yet again, the ability to petition the government does not mean that they have a duty to listen to you at all. It only means that you, the citizenry, have the ability to petition the government and they can't punish you for it. That's what the liberty to petition means, is that you cannot be punished for begging. Now, I will say this. If you are going to go and petition, it's better to use a paper petition. And if you are going to do that, I would like to plug here the Under One Banner petition, which I believe it's available at outpost-of-freedom.com. If you want to petition, that's the only one that's credible at this point, because it's a multi-issue petition, which by and large are more successful than single-issue petitions. But again, there is a little bit of the theory of critical mass here at play, right? The idea that regardless of whatever specific technique we're talking about, if enough people do X, therefore the method will succeed. Well, then the problem is, okay, if you don't achieve that critical mass, the method doesn't work. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. It could be petitioning. It could be a number of any other things. So that's kind of the main problem with petitioning. It requires a lot of pieces of paper to be filling up the offices of said Congress critters before they start looking around and saying, I wonder what's causing all of this.
Yeah, and I guess even with the actually first I'll bring up the in the Illinois Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 5 is where they mention the petitioning aspect of it. So it is an Illinois Constitution as well. I'm guessing it is for the other 49 states as well. So we got about 10 minutes left till break. Let's move forward to grassroots lobbying if you have nothing else on the petitioning.
Sure, that'd be fine.
Okay, so does grassroots lobbying work?
The short answer is no, but I believe your listeners would appreciate the longer answer explaining as to why. Well, Christopher Cantwell up in New Hampshire has actually rendered us a very valuable service. So let me just make that clear before continuing on. He was much more transparent in terms of working inside of the system, or at least trying to, than the so-called New Hampshire Liberty Association, or whatever, NHLA, or whatever their acronym is. At least in one sense, because he actually showed what it would look like to just as one man, not an organization, but just as one citizen, to waltz right in, sit down at a table, and talk to the legislative committee. And again, this is not federal government. This was the New Hampshire government. And so he went in there and he lobbied. He sat down at a table and said exactly what he thought about certain bills, whether he supported it or opposed it, and so forth. And he did that earlier this year, starting in January, and his last one was sometime in April. And I even called into his broadcast called Radical Agenda, and I just simply asked him, hey, are you going to make any more of these? I was thinking about writing an article about it and so forth, and, he just said, have at it. And basically what I discovered was that after tabulating the results and doing some math, imagine that, right? Math. You can use math to debunk reformism, by the way. Basically what I observed was not only was I unable to even broach the issue of causation, because of course correlation does not imply causation, in terms of Cantwell's influence on the decisions of these legislative committees in New Hampshire, there in Concord. Not only could I not even broach that, but even just in terms of correlation between those two variables, Cantwell's lobbying vis-a-vis the decisions of those legislative committees. Basically what I observed is that there is no observable effect grassroots lobbying had on New Hampshire's legislative process at all. Put another way, it literally came to, the probability of success came down literally to random chance. To put it a little bit more simply, think of a coin toss. That was the probability of success, was literally 1 to 2.
Yeah, indeed. And I know we do have a clip to play. I know a lot of it's called the Anarcho Lobbyist series, which is an interesting title for it, of course. But I want to give you guys an idea of what he actually does when he goes down to the Concord legislature. So this one, he is lobbying for a constitutional convention. So producer, please cue up clip 2.
Sure recognizes Chris Cantwell. Thank you very much for your time. I take this very seriously. I don't take this lightly at all. I understand the fears that folks here are expressing. The idea that the powers of the federal government might expand absolutely terrifies me. But what we see today is a situation where the United States Constitution borders on meaningless. We have a president who appears convinced that he is omnipotent, and I could just as easily have said that 8, 12, 16, or 20 years ago. Congress has passed the Affordable Care Act, assault weapons bans. We find ourselves today in what is quickly coming to resemble World War III. The federal government is monitoring our phone calls, our emails, and God knows what else. Whatever limits the Constitution purports to place on the federal government are thus rendered effectively null and void. people are concerned about a runaway convention. But I say we already have a runaway government. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a far greater and far more immediate concern. So I oppose HCR 1. I suggest that the committee mark it infeasible to legislate and that we all do everything in our power to trigger the Article 5 Convention. In the worst case scenario, we can secede from the Union, which is a maneuver I think becomes more appealing by the moment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none?
Thanks for coming out and testifying. It's enjoyable hearing. I hope you're not mad at us.
Well, look, I have certain opinions on government in general.
We understand. I'm just saying it's
Follow up?
we're here to listen. That's all.
I understand. And I'm not. As far as governments go, I've got to say that you folks are some fine people. I really do. I moved to the state from New York in 2012. I see what's going on there as absolute run amok. It's terrible what's happening, and you folks are open and do really appear to be concerned about the freedom of your people. And that's very. It means a lot to me.
You may be having a new government.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Notice the ass kissing at the end, and that's kind of what it's kind of required when you're going to go lobby a bunch of legislators. But
yes, unfortunately, let me just clear something up for the listener. Something that Cantwell said. I mean, this is in my article too on this. But HCR 1, the one about the Constitutional Convention, that I believe that was the one against having a Constitutional Convention, and Cantwell did win on that one because it was inexpedient to legislate. But that is different from the other Constitutional Convention bill, which was HB 148, and that was for doing an Article 5. And interestingly enough, let's see, hold on, I'm just checking the number real quick. Yeah, HB 148. I think that, I can't find it right offhand, but essentially that, I think that one he lost on, if I remember correctly. So it's interesting. In New Hampshire's legislature, the issue of a constitutional convention has come up twice. One bill in favor of, and then one bill against it. So it's interesting, I guess. But the lesson of the story, or the lesson here to be learned, at least in terms of what Cantwell has been thankfully very transparent about, is the fact that in terms of probability of success, in terms of his influence vis-a-vis the decisions of the various different legislative committees, it came down to random chance, a coin toss, 1 to 2 probability, literally.
Yep, indeed. I know you wanted to mention Curtis Ellis's Democracy Commandos.
Sure. This kind of gets into issues of kind of like voting and running for office and things along those lines. But just briefly put. Now, let me clear up something here. Curtis Ellis, he's the guy who wants a lot of people like him because he helps people who are grassroots run campaigns or something to that effect. I don't really know much about his background, but I do know 2 things about him which make him a very, very dangerous man. First of all, he is very much in favor of compulsory voting. If I remember correctly, I believe this is what the Australians have. The idea where basically the government, it's a lot like jury duty, where the government would force you to vote every election and so forth. And, at the risk of sounding like a moderate, if the government gave voters a choice under a compulsory voting scheme to give them a vote of no confidence, it wouldn't be as bad in one sense. But the fact is that I have never seen a vote of no confidence on any ballot, but very, very, very few times when I voted back when I did, years and years and years ago. So that's kind of problematic. But thankfully, voting is still voluntary, at least to a certain extent. But the other idea that Curtis Ellis came up with was democracy commandos. And this idea is basically where folks are encouraged to get a bunch of their buddies together, all of whom are registered voters, of course, which needs to be broached on its own merits, and essentially go and lobby their legislators, the Congress critters. And so basically the democracy commandos is grassroots lobbying one more time.
Yeah, indeed. But we are coming up to break here. When we come back, we'll go through the rest of the various aspects of reformism, and stay tuned for a fascist book. You're definitely not going to want to miss that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short break.
right to fail when the banksters all need to be in jail.
This is Niz from Disassociation Nation. As many of you know, I'm an avid vapor. And if you're like me, you're tired of being charged ridiculous amounts of cash for a disappointing experience when flavors just don't deliver. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Vapor Renew, a Flavor West company. If you're into mixing and creating your own custom e-liquids, Flavor West has everything you need to make delicious, satisfying flavors. Doesn't matter if you're a flavor chaser or if you love the look and feel of those big, beautiful, puffy plumes. FlavorWest.com can provide you with everything you need. Let's face it, if you vape, e-liquid is an ongoing expense. And if you're a dripper like me, then you know that blowing through a $30 bottle of juice isn't unheard of. Why pay more than you have to? So for excellent quality juice made right here in the United States, head over to VaporRenew.com, where they have hundreds of flavors pre-mixed and ready to vape at the most reasonable prices you'll find. Use coupon code RENU for an extra 10% off your entire order. Great juice at a great price and 10% off. Support companies that support liberty by making your next purchase at Vapor Renew. Or for mixing supplies, don't forget FlavorWest.com.
doTERRA Essential Oils, true gifts of the earth, provide you with the perfect prepper tool, the Family Physician Kit. 10 certified pure, therapeutic-grade oils to provide the care you need for your family's everyday health concerns and potential medical issues you may encounter when sheltering in place or bugging out.
Visit EssentialNewParadigm.info to view the complete product line and ask how you can receive 25% off each and every order.
Don't delay. Your family's health depends on you.
Do you have a group or organization founded on the principles of personal liberty, health freedom, or accountable government? We invite you to check out Same Side Entertainment. Get connected with leaders in the liberty movement like Tom Woods, Kevin Gutzman, Jack Hunter, Robert Scott Bell, Michael Scheuer, and many more. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our website at www.samesideentertainment.com. Again, that's www.samesideentertainment.com. Same Side Entertainment, connecting you with the education and resources you need.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com. Are you tired of seeing bullshit distractions, fallacious nonsense, and things that aren't relevant to your life coming across your fascist book newsfeed? Well, we are too! This segment is devoted to showing you the absurdity, irrationality, and overall proof of how well the distraction campaign is going. Liberty Under Attack brings you the fascist book trends of the day!
And today on Fascist Book, John McCain. Donald Trump says he won't apologize for discrediting an Arizona senator as a war hero.
Like I give a damn.
I think the first important thing to mention here is that John McCain is a neocon warmongering piece of shit. So, I strongly dislike Trump, but I don't know. I don't think it goes far enough. He wasn't a war hero. I don't think that goes far enough. What do you think, Kyle?
It's why I don't vote anymore. I mean, we'll get to that in a bit, but yeah, it just proves I was right from years ago.
Indeed. Chattanooga, Tennessee. FBI probes shooting suspect's computer for Islamic State group ties.
Well, that's interesting.
Same old, it seems. Wesley Clark, retired U.S. Army general, suggests isolating radicalized Americans in MSNBC interview. Well, so maybe radical is going to be the new term, huh, Kyle?
Yeah, probably. I mean, kind of like when you had me on that other time, the FBI changed their definition.
Because the state doesn't have radical beliefs.
Well, yeah, but kind of like when, I think it was earlier this year when the FBI changed their definition of extremism, thankfully in our favor. But yeah, it's radical. That's got to be the new one.
Yeah, that was quite an outright thing to say on mainstream media. Although I'm sure on MSNBC, all of the viewers probably loved that. But
he was also the same guy that said 7 countries in 5 years.
Oh, he was? Really?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yep. Good connection there too. Good connection. Okay. Thomas Roberts, NBC nightly news host, becomes first openly gay man to anchor a network news show.
Okay.
Well, that's cool. I don't care what people do in their personal lives. I just despise the politicizing of the social justice warrior shit, which is what it comes down to.
Yeah, well, what part of government get out of my bedroom and my pocketbook do you not understand?
Just get the fuck out.
Indeed. Robin Hood's Bay, full born with white outline on flank that resembles his silhouette. I don't even know what that means, quite honestly. What? Any idea? I'm not gonna actually.
I know what a silhouette is.
More distractions, so it would seem, just like reformism itself.
I don't know. We'll move forward. Jamie Lee Curtis, actress, dresses as Street Fighter character Vega at Evolution Championship Series. More distractions. Who really cares about that, anyways? Alex Rocco, actor known for a role in The Godfather, dies at 79. Okay, lots of people die every single day. Comerica Park, 7 vehicles catch fire in parking lot outside Detroit Tigers ballpark. Officials say.
Fire.
Wait! Didn't the Detroit government collapse or declare bankruptcy or something to that effect? And haven't
declared bankruptcy in 2009?
Yeah, and haven't there already been the privatization of formerly provided government services like transportation and other things? Oh,
yep.
Wait, that's right.
Transportation and security. Yep.
Oh, that's right. Oh, but some people would have us believe we can't privatize government's services in the free market, where there would actually be actual competition and so forth. But again, that's a topic for another time.
Yep, exactly. There are privatized security and bus, and the buses are actually a lot better. They're a lot cleaner. You can get Wi-Fi on the bus. When it comes down to competition, the quality goes up and the prices come down.
But remember, according to Status, that's just theory. It's just libertarian theory, don't you know? Right, because Detroit, that's not real world at all.
It's not a real city. It's not a real city. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's move forward. Xena. Okay, I guess we're going to go back into this shit again. Lucy Lawless says she would return to play character in Xena, Warrior Princess reboot. I don't care. Hankook, yeah, no joke. Hankook Tire Company's airless tires successfully passed speed test for potential consumer use. It's kind of cool. That's innovation. Nothing bad to say against that, really. So, all right. Well, that was Fascist Book. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That is what is important to your fellow Americans. Well, actually, it's trending. Well, it's at least trending here in America, probably worldwide for some of those. But yeah, that's what matters to your fellow Americans. That is it. They aren't here. They aren't discussing why reformism doesn't work. They aren't talking about profiling of American dissidents. They aren't talking about anything important. They're not talking about anything important. Just what'll make the American people more passive and distracted this week. So.
Bread and circuses, just like the Roman Empire.
Yep, exactly. So let's get back into. We still got a lot of material to cover. Let's get back into these various aspects of reformism. And I do want to go ahead and plug the call-in line again. If anyone is interested in joining in the discussion, the number is 218-895-3818 or on Skype at FPRN Radio Live. So, Kyle, should you watch the news?
Well, some people might not appreciate this or might be offended, so let me try and be as specific as possible. If you have something resembling a good education, actually, I'll be even more tolerant, a passable education, then maybe looking at some aspects of the news might be beneficial for you, maybe. That's a lot of qualifiers, of course. Generally speaking, though, the news is rather problematic. Rolf Dobelli wrote a great essay years back called Avoid News Towards a Healthy News Diet. I don't want to go through his entire kind of elaborate thesis, but the one that's kind of critical here, at least in terms of reformism, is that the news fails to explain the underlying processes at work. In other words, if you don't have a good education, whether it's in terms of history or actually more importantly, economics, the study of the market, how many people actually study economics? So, well, yeah, or they falsely think that they understand economics because they're Keynesians. The problem, though, is if you don't understand the underlying processes at work, you're going to look at the news very superficially and get a very skewed view of the world. Sometimes that might lead you down the road to mean world syndrome, or that might lead you down the road towards, I'm going to be an activist because Black Lives Matter. except, of course, if you actually understood the underlying processes, like government policing is A, unconstitutional, and B, it's a violent monopoly that was debunked well over a century ago by Belgian economist Gustave de Molinari, who, as a classical liberal, advocated for the privatization of security services.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't actually understand have any sort of even a minor degree of an education in terms of well, in this case, it would be more of economics, then of course you're going to look at police brutality, police militarization, those things that were mentioned on when you had me on that other time about the United Police States of America episode. None of that stuff's going to make any, or constitutional even, to bring the law kind of into it, is not going to make any sense if you see people getting gunned down in what perhaps might even be considered democide. So that's the problem with the news. It can really only tell you current events. Today, this thing happened here in that place, and, this happened and all that. But again, if you don't have any sort of background, then you're going to be, it's very superficial reading. So that's why I posed it more as a question, should you avoid the news? And I try to answer that question as best as I can, because remember, you still have to deal with the problem of the 6 blind men and the elephant.
Indeed. I do want to mention that with each one of these sections, there is an article in the anthology and also the audiobook available at libertyunderattack.com. So definitely make sure to go download those and read them at your own leisure. Also want to mention that's the motivation for Fascist Book is pretty much everything that Kyle explained. It's a carnival of distractions, and instead of spending a lot of time trying to understand and predict and things like that, we just rather make fun of it. So
yeah, and let me add one more caveat here. It's one thing if guys in the alternative media want to pay attention to certain news outlets, mainstream or other alternative ones that are more news focused. If they are following up on a particular story or thread and they're staying focused on it because they're trying to, again, understand the underlying process at work because events are rolling out in real time. Like, that's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you've got like a political prisoner type situation, a lot of that is happening in real time too. That's one thing. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with are people who have no understanding, no background, no understanding of any sort of situation where they're doing things. Like when I was at the gym the other day, it was on the TVs everywhere as I'm trying to lift weights and so forth. On Fox News, a bunch of neocon pundits were praising Bernie Sanders, who's an openly avowed socialist. That's what I'm talking about. That's the problem with the news, and even a lot of pundits don't have any good educations either because of the government school systems or whatever you want to call it. Instead of having a decent education via private schooling or probably better homeschooling.
Yep, I definitely agree with all that. I've been following up on the Greece situation because that's really important, and I've kind of avoided. The only one I go to now is Bloomberg because they have a lot more money to actually write articles on this stuff, and there seems to be one like every couple of hours. And even though there's a lot of the anti-capitalists blame capitalism for the communist government and such, but
but again, if they understood that the only solution that has been discovered to the economic calculation problem was prices. Mm-hmm. And that socialism or any variants thereof never solved the economic calculation on their own merits, then there's no controversy. It's just it's like watching the sun rise up in the morning and the sun setting in the evening. I mean, it's really that kind of predictable. Almost nobody understands economics, or they subscribe to an economic school like the Marxist school of economics. That's all about class analysis and the proletarian dictatorship or whatever and whatnot. So about the news. Here's what I'm trying to say about it. Don't become a news junkie. If you want to limit yourself to following a thread because you're trying to understand something unfolding in real time, fine. Heck, when I wrote an article a while back on the cashless society, most of that article was made up of articles. But again, even that was still spanning, I think, the better part of a decade at least. So again, it was more, in a sense, more historical, although recent history to be sure.
Yeah. I guess the final thing I'd want to mention on that is when it comes to news, people have a very short attention span, or they don't retain anything for very long. And I realized this from a few years ago when Snowden was making his releases. They would make a release each week, and no one would be able to. I assume it'd be very hard for an average listener to connect the dots in a way that made sense. So they kind of release things intermittently, so people can't actually get a handle on what's going on. It's kind of like, oh, today's Node made another release, and it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting compared to the last one, but no one really even thinks about that.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, move forward to debating.
Okay, let me put a caveat on this one, kind of like with the news cycle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying we shouldn't talk to each other. What I am saying is that when we do talk to each other and there is a difference of opinion, whether right or wrong, let's try and at least have something resembling common ground first. And if there isn't the possibility of some sort of common ground, if indeed the differences are more fundamental, then maybe talking isn't the way to solve those differences. Because, of course, there's the old adage about good fences make good neighbors. However, if there can be some sort of common ground reached, that there is some degree of some sort of shared foundational premises of some kind, then perhaps we can have a discussion about whatever it is we're disagreeing about. The problem is that even with certain debates, whether it's online or real world, there are people where there's at one point usually where the debaters, whether it's an informal kind of just like two people going at each other, sometimes in an internet discussion forum board or something, and then there's just other people just looking at the thread and commenting every once in a while, or it's a more formal moderated debate like the one I mentioned in my article, Debating Does Not Work, where you have a bunch of voluntarists debating, socialists. I'm sorry, but between those two, I mean, I understand both of their respective ideologies I'd like to imagine I understand them fairly well. There is no common ground. You have a bunch of folks who believe you can have private property without government versus a bunch of people who don't believe in private property and think that you must have, and not even limited government, an absolute government to decide questions of economics. There is no common ground there. There can't be. So the fact that they were having a debate is not very helpful at all. At least I don't think so. And unfortunately, a lot of things and of course I'm referring to a debate that took place years and years ago at the Cafe Libertalia in San Diego. I think it was in about 2010 or so. And yeah, it was a moderated debate, which is good that there was a moderator and such. But, there was like one point at which they should have just stop the debate, because at one point it actually came out clearly how they were opposed. But even then, I mean, Shane, let me put it this way. Some people have said over the years that, debates are good because they highlight ideas and concepts that never would have been able to be contrasted and compared before. Again, I disagree. That doesn't always happen, and it sure as hell didn't happen with that one debate years ago back in 2010 in San Diego, because I know each of the sides fairly well. And there was a whole bunch of things on both sides that were completely neglected. It was a long debate, too. It was like 2 hours and change or however long it was. So here's kind of what I'm getting at. Unless when you had me on a couple weeks ago or a month ago or whatever it was to have the very first LUA debate, and the topic was protesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was worth it. And again, kind of like, and you were acting as the moderator. When you had me and Matt on to debate that, again, that was a moderated debate, which is good. And the other thing, too, is that me and Matt actually had a shared foundation that people do have the right to protest and so forth. Our only differences was an issue more of utilitarian, and obviously, the results of that are clear for anybody to see. But so, like, that was worth it, at least for me.
We definitely shook hands on security culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's... I mean, I think that kind of speaks for itself. So again, I'm not saying all debating does not work. I'm just simply saying most of it, as it is practiced today, does not work. And again, like I said in the article, I think a way of approaching this is that, if you come across people that you want to spread the message of liberty to, but there are no shared fundamental common ground of anything, the only real other option I can think of is just pass them some literature, a pamphlet, a booklet, something, and allow them to convert themselves at that point. Because it's not worth your time, it's not worth your effort at that point. At least I don't think so.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I used to be way too into debating on Facebook, and I remember one of those events distinctly. I was in a 3%er group. It wasn't any official ones. It was just a separate 3%er group, and they posted. It was a picture like worshiping George W. And I obviously posted a lot of documentation, evidence of why Bush is a piece of shit. And within 2 minutes, I was berated by probably 10 people. No time to actually look through the evidence or the documentation. If they would have read through it and told me why they disagreed, then that's fine. But it was just outright. I was outright berated. So it's extremely counterproductive, especially on Facebook. Which is why I've not gotten into those type of things for a long time. So if you're one of the people that does that, you know for sure that you've dealt with those similar situations.
Yeah, and it increased your opportunity cost, didn't it? Because the time and effort you spent doing that was time and effort not being spent on doing something to actually help make yourself or others freer.
Exactly, and whenever it would be like an in-depth debate and it would go on for like span multiple days, yeah, it was definitely a waste of time, and there was nothing good that came from it. So it was just kind of a point whenever either of us decides to stop commenting. So it's definitely counterproductive. So, all right, so activist legal defense funds.
I think you had me on at least once before to talk about this.
And indeed, that was the April 12th broadcast of LUA Radio, and we discussed that for 2 hours. So if you want an in-depth discussion of it, go there. Go to the FPRonradio.com /Liberty Under Attack, and you can view, find that archive. So go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll kind of add on here that I don't think I mentioned when you had me on to discuss it that particular evening is quite simply just this. If you folks who do find yourselves in legal hot water, or you're at least anticipating it, such as the more brazen style of civil disobedience or anything else for that matter, for goodness sakes, don't socialize your court costs onto everyone else by begging them to donate to Legal Defense Fund. Be a responsible adult and, use your savings. In fact, I'd suggest, put aside some savings now for a, rainy day legal fund, as it were. And all that. And also, if you happen to find yourself on the inside for longer, I mean, also that money could also be used for like commissary purchases and stuff when you're incarcerated too. So, but here's the point: don't socialize your costs. If you're going to take a gamble on some sort of legal experiment that might land you in hot water, you bear the cost of that. Don't socialize it onto other people and then claim you're for private property. I mean, that's just silly.
I think that's probably the easiest, simplest way to put it. And I think in addition to that too, if you're paying the money for all of it, if it's your money that's going to it, going to your legal funds, it provides a much greater incentive for you to like actually try to win. Since it's your own money on the line, you have something to lose. So it's maybe, although you can't really say that in the criminal justice system, but you may have a little bit of a higher chance of winning if you have a vested interest in the monies that are spent on the legal defense.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, moving forward, suing the government does not work.
Oh, this one, yes. Okay, so different reformists have basically said over the years that if we, gotta love those collective pronouns that are vague, right? If we sue the government more often, then that will put it back in its constitutional cage, and then we can have real justice and all this hyperbolic rhetoric that's just not true.
Paper cage.
Yeah, it's something like that. And here's basically what I did. I went through a bunch of cases, civil. These are civil cases, right? Just to keep that in mind, we're not talking criminal here. These were civil cases. I went through about a little over half a dozen, and I actually did have assistance with this, and getting the documents, and I believe it's in the postscript for that article, and I was so I did have some help with that, and what I learned was basically what some mainstream media sources did not admit to as far as the results of these cases go, because, of course, the problem with the news cycle is like there's never any follow-up with anything. You actually have to go to the original source and try and get an answer. And thankfully, I got enough assistance where I was able to do that. And the results were thusly. It's bad. Suing the government does not work, and that's the short answer. Here's the somewhat longer answer. There's different reasons. There were 2 wiretapping cases, and I think you had me on. I think it was the first time you had me on, I believe, with the history on Dragnet wiretapping. And I think it was either a caller or someone in the chat room mentioned about the viability of suing NSA for wiretapping. And I think I addressed this then, but I decided for this article to kind of go a little bit more into it. And it was still the same result. It was because the plaintiff, in both cases, I think it was Jewel versus NSA and then another one with ACLU in it. It was pretty much the same reason. The plaintiffs did not have standing to sue NSA because they couldn't prove that they were specifically wiretapped. Now, remember, the whole thing is about dragnet wiretapping. See the little bait and switch right there?
Yep.
So you can't sue them. So I think that's pretty much closed the book on that one. Some of the other cases that don't have to do with dragnet wiretapping. Obviously some people remember when Adam Kokesh danced at the Jefferson Memorial. Well, before that, there was actually a lady who was similarly, what the court case calls expressively dancing. The name of the case is, I'm trying to pull it up, Oberwetter versus Hilliard and Salazar, number 09-0588. This was a 2010 case, so this was before Kokesh did his stunt. But yeah, apparently you cannot expressively dance at the Jefferson Memorial because to expressively dance is a public demonstration, and because the judge put his foot down about that, a public demonstration cannot happen within a non-public forum, which is what the Jefferson Memorial is designated as, which is kind of interesting. I was like, wow, I wonder what other non-public forums there are. I mean, does non-public imply private? I don't know.
Good question.
What do you think about? Yeah, and so that's kind of where it was. And my favorite too was when the judge said, "Oh, we're not trying to chill free speech or free expression here because the government's being viewpoint neutral." That was the term he used. Judge John Bates. Judge Bates said, "Well, the government's being viewpoint neutral by prohibiting all demonstrations at this non-public forum called the Jefferson Memorial." And so when the arresting officer, Hilliard, he ripped out Oberwetter's earbud, violently twisted her arm, shoved her against a pillar, and subsequently arrested her for disturbing the peace, releasing her a couple hours later. I mean, there's more details that are obviously in my article, Suing the Government Does Not Work. But that's so because of this wonderful legalese of this is this and this is that, and therefore it's a good thing because, of course, without government, who would violently shove dancing women against stone pillars? And so here's the money shot, as it were. On that one, Oberwetter did not have standing to sue Hilliard for his actions because he did have probable cause to arrest her because the judge said she was expressively dancing in a non-public forum and so forth. Okay, so that's kind of the problem. Is again another case of not having standing to sue, just like with the NSA cases. What I'll just mention briefly here, because obviously, I mean, this could also be an episode by itself. But a lot of the other cases, whether it was Dobbs, Eckert, or Miller, a lot of these suing the government cases end up in settlements. And 2 of those cases ended up, Dobbs and Eckert, involve cavity searches to greater and lesser degrees. Well, actually, it was all pretty invasive, let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, Dobbs I think he got like $1.6 million, and Miller got I think her attorney admitted something about like $185,000 or something. But the problem with the settlement is that the government does not either confess, like, hey, yeah, we screwed up, or they were found guilty, preferably by a jury or anything. It's just, well, we're not claiming responsibility. We're going to pay you basically to shut up. So that's kind of the problem with that. The only case in the sample that I was able to find that was actually a win, but in some ways was not really a win. It was more of a Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrhic victory, for people who don't know. That's basically a type of victory where you technically won like an engagement. And this is going back to like military science. where you win an engagement, but because you lost so much in achieving that victory, it's kind of like a sad or hollow victory. The only case that was really, I'm trying to pull up the name here, it was called Genovese versus Town of Southampton, number 10-CD-3470, and it was concluded actually last year in 2014. She got a payout of $1.1 million, and it was a jury verdict. The jury found that Deputy Robert Carlog was guilty of malicious prosecution against Genovese. However, here's the problem, okay? Remember, this is the win. This is the best result. However, for whatever reason, they also thought that she failed to prove either battery or political oppression. And if you actually read the case, it's I personally think there's some political oppression going on there.
Yep, I would have to agree. We're coming up to break. We've got some more aspects of reformism to go through, and obviously we'll get to the conclusion later on in this broadcast. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short break.
He said, who's doing the sin of sin? Are you the one sleeping with my daughter? I said, hey man, you gotta drink cold water.
Hello, America. You believe in liberty? Well, fuck you! Why is it that every time I turn on internet radio, I can't seem to find one educated person with libertarian point of views? That's why I choose FPRN Radio. For liberty, goddammit!
doTERRA Essential Oils, true gifts of the earth, provide you with the perfect prepper tool, the Family Physician Kit. 10 certified pure, therapeutic-grade oils to provide the care you need for your family's everyday health concerns and potential medical issues you may encounter when sheltering in place or bugging out.
Visit EssentialNewParadigm.info to view the complete product line and ask how you can receive 25% off each and every order.
Don't delay. Your family's health depends on you. Health depends on you.
This is Niz from Disassociation Nation. As many of you know, I'm an avid vapor. And if you're like me, you're tired of being charged ridiculous amounts of cash for a disappointing experience when flavors just don't deliver. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Vapor Renew, a Flavor West company. If you're into mixing and creating your own custom e-liquids, Flavor West has everything you need to make delicious, satisfying flavors. Doesn't matter if you're a flavor chaser or if you love the look and feel of those big, beautiful, puffy plumes. FlavorWest.com can provide you with everything you need. Let's face it, if you vape, e-liquid is an ongoing expense. And if you're a dripper like me, then you know that blowing through a $30 bottle of juice isn't unheard of. Why pay more than you have to? So for excellent quality juice made right here in the United States, head over to VaporRenew.com where they have hundreds of flavors pre-mixed and ready to vape at the most reasonable prices you'll find. Use coupon code RENU for an extra 10% off your entire order. Great juice at a great price and 10% off. Support companies that support liberty by making your next purchase at Vapor Renew. Or for mixing supplies, don't forget FlavorWest.com.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
And welcome back to Liberty Under Attack Radio on the Freedom Phalanx Radio Network. If you're just joining us, we are discussing reformism with our good friend Kyle Rearden from the Last Bastille blog. To find the anthology and the audiobook we are discussing, make sure to go to tinyurl.com/reformism. Again, tinyurl.com/reformism. Again, if you got something to add to the discussion, feel free to call in. Whether advocate or enemy of reformism, it doesn't matter. We'd love to hear from you. Number to call is 218-895-3818 or FPRN Radio Live. So, let's get back to it. Is there anything you want to conclude on suing the government since we're up against that break? Or
sure, I'll just add one more thing. So this is kind of the best we can hope for. Is either you don't have standing to sue for whatever reason, you get a, let's call it a draw, where the government's not found guilty for their malfeasance, but they basically, pay off the plaintiff to keep, shut him up and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Or, as in the one case, you do get a jury verdict, basically, and the government was wrong, but it's always on the least serious of the charges, and then the other ones that would be the most serious. I think outright political oppression, I think, is about as bad as it gets,
Mm-hmm.
at least in that one case. Just a quick detail. She was called teabagger a lot, and we're going to make an example out of you. They said they were going to call her, try and slap her with some sort of terrorism thing. Thankfully, they weren't able to. But it was outright political oppression, like just classic Stasi kind of stuff. And the jury's like, no, there's no evidence here of that. Nope. And that was a jury. So that's the best you can hope for, at least from the cases I studied. And that was that was about 7 different cases I looked at, with only one win. I think you can kind of figure out this probability of success from there.
Yeah, I think there's one other thing to mention here. Like if someone files a lawsuit with the government, no matter federal, state, local, doesn't matter. Whenever these payouts are made, they aren't from the like, let's say in Genovese's, let's say it wasn't a police officer's money or anything like that. It was taxpayer money. So the government doesn't care if they have to pay you off to shut you up and like just make the story, just sweep it under the rug. They're going to do that because it's not their money to begin with.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the idea behind suing the government, according to reformists, is that we're going to hold the government accountable and put it back in its constitutional cage. Really? Okay. Did Officer Carlock, was that $1.1 million of his own personal assets that was paid to Genovese? Okay, well, there you go, and there's the problem. So it doesn't matter if we're talking about Mr. Eckert with his $1.6 million or whomever else. The government's not getting punished. I mean, come on, let's call a spade here.
There's also one caveat there too, and that was the fact that didn't Eckert have to pay taxes on his settlement?
It was implied in the settlement agreement that he had some federal income tax liability, but to be quite honest, Shane, I don't know enough to speak on that knowledgeably. But I will say they did make the claim in the settlement document and such, which kind of raised my eyebrow, and I did go into some detail on that in the actual article.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring that up too because that was an interesting little point there. So let's move forward here. So jury nullification does not work. Tell us about that, Kyle.
Well, I think it's important to define jury nullification for people who don't know, and then I got to make the utilitarian argument as to why it doesn't work. Jury nullification, simply defined, is the right and proper power of the jury to judge not only the facts, but also the law of a particular case brought before them for adjudication. They do this by voting their conscience, regardless of the judge's instructions. Okay, everybody get that? So it's a real legal doctrine. There have been lawyers who have admitted on record, different interviews I've seen, where they said, like, yeah, this is a real thing, but we really kind of don't want to tell people about it. It's like an openly admitted cover-up in a manner of speaking, which just is astounding. But yeah, jury nullification is a real legal doctrine. And I'll make this comparison. The way I view jury nullification is very much the way I view writing letters to the editor. Like it's part of the American tradition, but it's something that's been lost, and I don't honestly think we'll get it back. Now, I already explained why with regards to writing letters to the editor, because it's a police state intrusive privacy type thing, so you can't do it pseudonymously, at least not easily. And so let me explain it for jury nullification. The main problem is that defendants are pleading out. And there was one statistic I saw where it's like over 90% of both federal and state level criminal cases, the defendants are pleading out. So by the time any of these are going before a jury, it's already a minority. So even if every single one of those cases that did go before a jury was a mala prohibita case, let's say nonviolent drug offense like simple possession of cannabis, for example, even if every single one of those was a mala prohibitas, something like that, no victim, no crime, as it were, and the jury nullified each and every single one of those, you wouldn't even put a dent in the criminal and justice system. Even if the jury was nullifying, like batting 100 to 1, or I shouldn't say 101, was batting 100%. I don't think that would effectively nullify the government's imposition of narcotics prohibition, let's say, or much of anything else. It could also be felon in charge of or felon in possession of firearm. It could be pick any sort of victimless crime out of a hat at this point. It's pretty much what jury nullification would be good for. Except what I'm saying is that I have seen no evidence, as opposed to these reformists, including the Fully Informed Jury Association, FIJA, which is reformist. I have not seen any evidence from FIJA or any of these other organizations, especially some up in New Hampshire, that they do the flyer outreach, where they pass flyers to potential jurors or actual jurors saying, "Hey, by the way, you have the power to nullify." Because, of course, those guys always invite jury tampering charges. I mean, that's what happened to Julian Heiklin years back. He got arrested for a couple different things. I think one of them was jury tampering, but I think they were also doing some other stuff. Like they were claiming he was trespassing even though he wasn't. So the government likes to harass people who try to do any sort of outreach. But the fact of the matter is that even if the outreach was 100% successful, I don't think it would matter because defendants plead out because they're scared. And remember, too, there's also the issue of the jury tax, whereby if a defendant decides to push and go to trial, if they lose, the government, the prosecutors and such are going to go for like maximum penalty or more severe penalty than they otherwise would have under a plea deal. So there's very much a prisoner's dilemma type situation here, very much so. And that's to say nothing about the coerciveness of jury duty itself, as Murray Rothbard pointed out.
Yep, that's true. And for those who aren't aware, I did have my own little back in I think it was May 10th when I actually had to go. But yeah, I was summoned to a jury, and you can find the whole story at libertyunderattack.com. But I was coerced into doing this. There's no way out of it unless I wanted to face a contempt of court charge. So I had to go. So I'm not a big fan of jury nullification. But if I'm going to go there, if I'm going to be forced to go there, I might as well. If it's like someone getting hung for a marijuana charge, I might as well do it. Because I'm going to be there anyways. But in the case I was assigned to, it was a violation of the non-aggression principle as well as self-ownership. So at that point, jury nullification, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Just kind of conclusion to that, she got 4 years, which they didn't hit her with the maximum sentence, which was kind of surprising to me. But regardless, that's still 4 years for felony scratching. So take it how you will. Even if there is a chance to nullify, you still have to deal with the moral issue, the moral and immorality issue too. When it comes to like violently using force against somebody else, because you cannot nullify that law.
Yeah, and obviously, I could go on this for a while, but just for purposes of time, there are some really significant problems with trying to use the jury box to somehow increase human liberty. I just don't see it. You see, at least with voting, as bad as that is, at least it's still voluntary, at least as of today anyway. You can't say that about jury duty. And remember, in order to be in a position as a juror to use jury nullification, you have to be summoned, literally summoned by the government at a time and place of their choosing, because they have the initiative on that one, unfortunately. You can't just show up at the courthouse and say, "Hey, I'd like to be a juror. Can you pay me $20 or whatever the going rate is? I'd like to sit on some cases, make a little bit of money, and cause some ire to some overly zealous prosecutors." You can't do it. They have to summon you, so that takes all the power and initiative away from you, gives it to the state. I don't see how that increases liberty at all.
I would definitely have to agree. So moving forward, running for public office does not work.
Oh gosh, yes, the other side of voting. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. Okay, well, remember, let me just remind everybody about Hitchens' razor. He who makes the claim bears the burden of proof. It is not incumbent upon critics to provide evidence And so the only reason I'm providing any sort of evidence is for the benefit of everyone's remedial political education, more so than anything. Okay, so 2004, the so-called, the anti-libertarian Party, which I will refer to from now on as LP. The 2004 LP presidential candidate was Michael Badnarik. He had ballot access in 49 of the several states. He still failed to win the U.S. presidency, ultimately receiving 0.32% of the popular vote. And more importantly, he got this much big fat zero from the Electoral College, which is actually required by the actual federal Constitution. So there you go. Ron Paul, he ran 3 presidential campaigns, 3 of them, 1988, 2008, 2012. Kind of lost each time. And if you look at the campaign receipts, the money keeps going up and up. I mean, in order to keep pace with inflation, which of course is caused by central banking. But 1988, $2 million, 2008, $28,100,000, 2012, $40,947,039. So despite all these costs, both not just opportunity costs, but also quite costly financial costs as well, you still got people like Dr. Walter Block and other folks saying that even people who believe in no government should still participate in the political process, of course, because that's the only way we're going to get more libertarians, allegedly, which, of course, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever, especially if the way to achieve freedom is through the economic means of making money instead of the political means, to paraphrase Knock one more time.
Yeah, I think another interesting point here is the daunting election laws. I know for one of the articles I'm working on now, and I was just kind of reading through it to see what you had to do or what you had to do to actually be eligible to run for office. And the state of Illinois actually advises anyone running for office to hire a lawyer. And I think James Madison had something to say on this one when it comes to voluminous laws. It's Federalist Paper number 62. Quote, the internal effects of a mutable policy are still more poisons the blessing of liberty itself. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. If they be repealed or revised before they are promulgated, or undergo such incessant changes that no man who knows what the law is today can guess what it will be tomorrow. Law is defined to be a rule of action, but how can that be a rule which is little known and less fixed? And that's definitely relatable to the election laws. They actually recommend you hire a lawyer, not just some average Joe couldn't just run for office, and it's just not possible.
Yeah, and so Madison was right about calamitous laws. I mean that's kind of the problem here, is that whether it's different portions of United States Code, federal law, or it's even Texas election law, where I'm at, or Texas election code, Texas election code. It's just, I mean, it's in more. I don't want to take up valuable airtime here, but it's in my article on running. It's called "Running for Public Office: Why Infiltrating the State is Foolish." And again, see, this is. I don't want to rip on the Free Staters in New Hampshire too much, but I remember one of them mentioned when they praised Tim O'Flaherty, who is running in Manchester's Ward 5, and I think he won the election. He was like, "Oh, by the way, he's an anarchist politician."
That's so screwed up.
Yeah, and you know what? I think
contradictions.
Well, yeah, and yes, you're right, Matt. And I think Wendy McElroy put it the right way. Anarchists who vote are like atheists who pray. The only thing I've ever expected from anybody is consistency. And unfortunately, in the field of politics, it seems, especially mainstream politics particularly, that's kind of the sum of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd like to mention for the listeners that may not be aware, if you missed last week's broadcast and also the article I wrote, I attended a local LP chapter meeting where they were vetting an aspiring political ruler, and this ties in for a couple of reasons here. First off, there were a couple of major issues. Michael was inconsistent when it came to his own party platform, especially with social issues, and this is the Libertarian Party platform, which I'm sure he's never read before. Second off, Michael does not know the Constitution, which as a potential LP candidate, he damn well should, considering it's pretty much the basis of their platform. They're trying to restore the Constitution as far as what it says in their platform. Lastly, if he's going to run for federal office, the United States Senate, he must know the federal Constitution. I brought up a question to him about Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8 of the Constitution, which of course is the copyright clause, and the answer I got to it was about 5 words. That's it. Like it was not sufficient in any way or sense. So even let's say that running for public office is effective. Like everything it's easy. The laws aren't tough, and it's actually really easy. If you look at the ballot access and things like that, let's say it's really easy to do. You still cannot rely on anyone to know the limits of their potential power, which Chris Michael did not. He did not know the Constitution, which is what is supposed to politically bind him as far as power goes. But for information on why we don't like the LP, we'll just cut this off here. Just listen to last week's broadcast where we discussed it for a full 2 hours for your enjoyment. So go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a fundamental issue here that I would like to address here briefly, which is this notion of we're going to infiltrate the state, infiltrate government, and we're going to turn it against itself. And this is usually the justification behind a lot of reformism, if not all of reformism, but even specifically the reformist technique of running for public office. We're going to run people to be like county sheriffs and whatever else. We're going to get our guys. We're going to get American patriots to become county sheriffs so they can be truly constitutional sheriffs and keep their oaths and honor their oaths of the Constitution. And all of this silly, hyperbolic rhetoric that just is completely wrong from start to finish, even for people who want to have limited government. I mean, come on. When was the last time anyone, elected politician with or without a firearm on his hip as part of his office, actually was limited, actually abided by, let's say, the terms of the contract, as it were? Please let me know the last time. I'd love to discover it, because I can't find any. And look, I mean, Jim or Mr. or Sheriff Arpaio, seriously, who admires that creep? He's a notorious narcotics prohibition warrior. I mean, that man is about as repugnant to the Constitution as King George III. I mean, to hell with Sheriff Arpaio. Seriously. That's what happens when you try to infiltrate the state. You get guys like Arpaio and other miscreants. And I think Stefan Molyneux, had something to say about that in terms of infiltrating the state and why conceptually doesn't work.
Yeah. One more point here I want to mention before we play that clip, and you guys are going to enjoy this one. But let's kind of look at the history, like with the Libertarian Party, Ron Paul, Chris Cantwell. Obviously, we're not going to get into the Libertarian Party because we did a broadcast on that. But there's a long history of people trying to get in political offices, and they always fail. I mean, just look at Ron Paul for a brief moment here. He won and held the seat for 36 years. It was on and off to his own admission. But he actually didn't get anything done. He was in there for over 30 years. He did get the term put on him called Dr. No because he voted no on everything. But Congress just railroaded him and went around him anyways. So even if you can get your anarchist libertarian politician in there, they're kind of not going to pay any attention to you. Let's move forward here to clip number 3. This is Stefan Molyneux in one of his Ron Paul series. So, producer, please cue up clip 3.
I'm going to get you to turn against Hispanics. Now, if you can do that, then at least you have lifted a coffee cup. If you can't do that, then for heaven's sake, stop talking about changing the federal government, please. I mean, please, I'm telling you, it looks ridiculous. It really, really does, you know? It's like, I can't quite lift the coffee cup, but I'll be able to lift the building. I just don't think it's really going to work out that way. I have to tell you, It's just pretty funny when you think about Okay, I'm fine. Excuse me. Maybe I've lifted one too many coffee cups today.
Okay, you can cut it there, producer.
Sort of what I'm saying.
But that is that's something else. That is hilarious, and that's kind of what it is. It's kind of funny when you think like first before like libertarians try to infiltrate the state and turn it into a liberty-loving entity. Why don't they just like it'd be a lot easier to infiltrate like the NAACP and turn it into the KKK or vice versa. So like try that first. And then work your way up, like the coffee cup versus lifting a building. It's pretty good. That's a pretty good metaphor.
Yep, infiltrate the mafia, turn into the United Way, and so forth. And by the way, that's even if we're talking about putting government back in its constitutional cage, at least by way of elections, anyway. Because we're going to just elect our county sheriff, and he'll be one of our patriots, and it's just like, dude, there are other things you can do. Committees of safety. There are other things you can do that have at least a decent chance of working that are more in line with the economic means of making money. But running for county sheriff, I'm sorry, I know I'm emphasizing that one particularly, but I hope it gets through the heads of American patriots to stop this nonsense. It doesn't work. It will never work. And I think one thing worth pointing out here, that was something that Naomi Wolf really failed to understand, reformist that she is that she was complaining in one of her books about how there are barriers to entry in terms of seeking public office. Well, Mrs. Wolf, here's why. The state as it is today, government in general, because the rulers believe they're omnipotent and so forth, they increase the barriers to entry because they want to further entrench themselves on their respective thrones. Okay, that's why you've got the calamitous and voluminous laws, as Madison pointed out, and so forth. Mm-hmm. That's what's going on. So if somebody wants to be a county sheriff or whatever else, I'm sorry, but it ain't happening.
Yep, I agree completely. And we are going to take this final break. But in just a few minutes here, I know one of your articles was titled "Filming Government Agents Does Not Work." Can you give us a little insight on that?
Sure. In some ways, this kind of is an interesting parallel to suing the government doesn't work. There are a lot of guys, again, many of them up in New Hampshire, but also other places as well, where they think that, if we take our video cameras and film the cops while they manhandle us and other people, then we can stop them. They call this cop blocking. Alternatively, there's another version called confrontations, where if you go up against these politicians, usually bureaucrats or legislators, Congress critters, and ask them questions like, why did you vote for the 2003 invasion of Iraq? Why did you do that, Senator Nincompoop? Why did you do that? And then you try to get an answer out of them and so forth. It's like, good luck.
And then you get hauled out of there by security.
and some people would call it ambush journalism. But again, I don't want to place a value judgment on whether so-called ambush journalism is good or not. I'm merely saying that look at the opportunity costs involved with actually trying to even conduct such ambush interviews in terms of getting them to answer the question, why did you drone bomb that Pakistani wedding, Mr. President, or whatever the question is, doesn't matter what it is. So again, whether it's certain people that are at a police checkpoint or whatever on the border or any other context, I mean, this is the question, how many officers have lost their jobs? How many politicians have lost their offices and so forth and lost their re-elections because of these videos that have come? I mean, filming the cops has been done for years now, well over 5 years, well over half a decade at least, if not longer. Okay, so there's been more than enough time to kind of gauge whether this works or not. If somebody has any evidence, again, I'm being the critic here, and remember the reformists bear the burden of proof on this. If they've got evidence that, cops have been punished, they've lost their personal assets because somebody sued them, especially if there was a video involved or whatever, I'd like to know about it. But I have looked for a couple years now, and I can't find any. That's kind of problematic.
Yeah, Yeah, indeed. And I mean, there's a lot of these videos. There's that high-profile one. I don't follow the news that much, but there was one where the cop shot the guy in the back, and it was on video. There have been very, very few instances. A lot of the time, the cops put out an administrative leave, and then once it blows over, he usually gets a promotion. That's pretty much how it works. So maybe they're actually hurting. Maybe filming cops is actually contrary to what their actual goal is. So. Regardless, when we come back, we'll go through the more controversial ones, protesting voting, and we'll also give you some concluding thoughts. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Peace brings a cease to the ego, so pleased to be evil. This being believes he sees like an eagle, how regal. Not a single thing that he could do could stop the shift of consciousness. Not even ominous plots to cause the apocalypse.
Mr. President, members of Congress, you've been making a lot of noise about taking our guns away. But you might want to review history. 1835, Gonzales, Texas Territory. The authorities wanted to confiscate the big gun that protected that colony. You know what the people said? Come and take it. Because they were willing to fight for their freedom and their guns. So are we.
Come and take it if you want it. Come and take it if you think you can. Come and take it, but I warn you, you'll have to pry it from my cold dead hands. We want the freedom that God gave us, so you best not cross that line. If you want this gun, you gotta come through us and take it.
One shot at a time. Just like Gonzales, we're keeping our guns.
doTERRA Essential Oils, true gifts of the earth, provide you with the perfect prepper tool, the Family Physician Kit. 10 certified pure, therapeutic-grade oils to provide the care you need for your family's everyday health concerns and potential medical issues you may encounter when sheltering in place or bugging out.
Visit essentialnewparadigm.info to view the complete product line and ask how you can receive 25% off each and every order.
Don't delay. Your family's health depends on you.
Health depends on you.
This is Niz from Disassociation Nation. As many of you know, I'm an avid vapor. And if you're like me, you're tired of being charged ridiculous amounts of cash for a disappointing experience when flavors just don't deliver. I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to Vapor Renew, a Flavor West company. If you're into mixing and creating your own custom e-liquids, Flavor West has everything you need to make delicious, satisfying flavors. Doesn't matter if you're a flavor chaser or if you love the look and feel of those big, beautiful, puffy plumes. FlavorWest.com can provide you with everything you need. Let's face it, if you vape, e-liquid is an ongoing expense. And if you're a dripper like me, then you know that blowing through a $30 bottle of juice isn't unheard of. Why pay more than you have to? So for excellent quality juice made right here in the United States, head over to VaporRenew.com where they have hundreds of flavors pre-mixed and ready to vape at the most reasonable prices you'll find. Use coupon code RENU for an extra 10% off your entire order. Great juice at a great price and 10% off. Support companies that support liberty by making your next purchase at Vapor Renew. Or for mixing supplies, don't forget FlavorWest.com.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
At a certain point, you've made enough money. At a certain point, you've made enough money. You've made enough.
And welcome back to Liberty Under Attack Radio, your place for sourced and documented truth. Coming up on this last segment here, you got anything to add to the conversation? If you have, like I said, advocate or enemy of reformism, give us a call. Number is 218-895-3818, or on Skype at FPRN Radio Live. We'd really love to hear from you. So we just wrapped up the filming government agents. And now we're on to one that seems to be happening more and more with a lot of these various protests. So, Kyle, does protesting work?
Well, I think I kind of explained this during that LUA debate with Matt. My side of it is I don't think it does work. I think there are much better alternatives. I think you said that there was that festival you were going to. and such.
Correct.
I think that's a much better alternative. I think if the goal is to express free association, free speech, and such, I think there are better ways of going about doing it. And so I would just defer to that previous debate that we did for more details on that.
The date of that broadcast, if anyone's interested in the debate on protesting, that was a May 3rd broadcast. Again, you can go to fprnradio.com/Liberty Under Attack and find the entire list of archives there. So go ahead, Kyle.
The only thing I really want to add is not about that topic specifically, but just more broadly. I would like to just kind of remind everybody that you must keep in mind any one of these things we could easily talk about for 2 hours. So the fact that we're trying to kind of do the whole thing is, so just please understand, if there are some details we're leaving out, whether it's about green mail or other such things, it's more of a time issue. We're trying to kind of cover like the entire series kind of an all in one fell swoop. And, again, if people want to print out the PDF and read it, in a 3-ring binder or, listen to it in your car if you don't have time, while you're on your commuting. That would be good. If you want like the full details of why I'm criticizing the reformers for not bearing their burden of proof, at least as far as I see it. So there are more details to the story, but what we're doing here tonight is kind of more of an overview than anything. So,
okay, all right. Any final points on reformism, or you just want to defer back to our broadcast on it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Any final details on protesting, or just refer the listeners to?
Just refer them to that. That'd be fine.
Okay, so again, that's the May 3rd broadcast, and you can go to fprnradio.com/Liberty Under Attack, and you can listen to the entire thing. So now, probably the most controversial one. So, does voting work?
Oh, here we go. Okay, the short answer is no. And now let me give you the longer reason why, because I think it's important to understand these things. Okay, first of all, voters are incompetent. That's not my opinion, although I guess you could say it is my opinion as well. More importantly, it's not necessarily my opinion, let me put it that way. The reason I say that is because there have been longitudinal social science studies done basically saying that voters are irrational and it is not possible to be a rational voter. I believe there's some literature, I think his name was Brian Kaplan, wrote The Myth of the Rational Voter. There's some quite considerable detail as to why that is. But the fact of the matter is that voters are irrational, scientifically proven to not be rational. If you want more details, I suggest you read his book or look at other sources as far as that goes. One study I think that is worth mentioning revealed that political partisans, when presented with objective facts, will twist those in such a manner so as to hang on to those facts that support their preconceived notions while conveniently ignoring the rest of the sample. So in other words, confirmation bias. So, there's kind of your first problem right off the bat is voters are irrational and succumb to confirmation bias. Then, of course, there's voter fraud, which is what more people are familiar with, and even people who really like socialism for whatever reasons. Even they, I remember during the Bush Jr. years, Bush Jr.'s reign of terror, there was a lot of stuff coming out at the time. I remember the one documentary, I think it was called Hacking Democracy, where they basically proved, the electronic voting machines are so bad that it's very, very easy to steal elections, quite literally steal elections and such. Mm-hmm. Of course, what they don't mention is that in that documentary, as well as other sources, that you could also cheat on paper ballots too. But to be fair, they are correct in the sense that the electronic voting machines make it all the easier to do said voter fraud.
Or here in Illinois, absentee ballots are a major problem, but still, it's another aspect of it.
When you consider also other things like Downes's median voter theorem, the closer to allegedly different positions are to each other, the more it appeals to people. So it's basically a way of trying to explain why voters really are fallacious and irrational. Yet one more time, because they really, really like the fallacy of moderation. If something's in the middle and centrist, that therefore means it's good. It doesn't matter how much tyranny it actually enables. If you look at individual vote strength percentages, it's ridiculously low. We're talking like 0.00000, like 1% type of things, and such. And again, some people would argue that, if we just change the election structure from single-member district plurality to proportional representation like they do in the various banana republics of South America, that will mystically solve everything, except, of course, when you understand that the delegates, the equivalent of the congressmen and legislators in those banana republics on the other continent south of here, how like here you've got like professional lobbyists and legislators and there's all sorts of corruption and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, down there, imagine, if you will, the legislators being the lobbyists. That's what proportional representation enables and encourages. So yes, it's true whether you have closed list or open list PR. The difference isn't worth getting into here. But regardless of whichever style of proportional representation you have, it doesn't fix a damn thing. And in fact, it actually enables more of that cronyism and such, because now there isn't even a thin veneer, an illusion of separation of advocacy from representation and legislation and so forth, because it's all one and the same. So if you're worried about K Street lobbyists, imagine if the K Street lobbyists were the congressmen. That's your Banana Republic South American proportional representation system where you at least have preferential voting. So that's government for you. You solve the one problem of the wasted vote syndrome, and you deal with this, and now you have created another problem with not even an illusion of separation of the two. Of advocacy from representation and legislation. I mean, don't you just love that? A little bit of unintended consequences for you?
Oh, yeah. And I think there's one other, there's a couple more points here maybe brought up. When you vote, you are agreeing to the legitimacy of the process itself. When you vote, you are consenting to being governed. You're also consenting to whatever the outcome may be. So the voters like to say, "Oh, if you didn't vote, you can't complain." That's not necessarily, you know what I mean, Kyle?
It's the other way around. If you do vote, you can't complain. It's kind of like suing the government. If you actually go to the government as a plaintiff and you say, "Hey, I want to file a lawsuit and all that," you are agreeing to the results of the contest ahead of time because you're recognizing the legitimacy of this third party called government. As being, rightful authority and all this nonsense. So voting in that sense is very much like suing the government. You are agreeing the government is the rightful arbiter, as it were. So yeah, I mean, if you want to complain, don't file lawsuits and don't vote. Don't recognize the legitimacy of the government, period. Or at least I'd suggest you at least consider it.
Yeah, and then there's also one other thing here, and this is for the small L libertarians or the true libertarians, the ones not running for office. Voting is a violation of the non-aggression principle. When you vote, what you are doing is violently forcing your beliefs upon others. Obviously, you're like when you scratch shit in a booth, you're not actually like hurting somebody, but your guy gets into office and puts through this legislation, and then it's enforced at the barrel of a gun. So it is a violation of the non-aggression principle, and that's obviously more so for the small L libertarians and the voluntarists, the anarchist types. But regardless, it's still something that needs to be brought up because you are violently forcing your beliefs upon others when you vote.
Yeah, you're basically giving legitimacy and approval as a voter. Doesn't matter the specific item. The very fact you're there voting at all is that you're giving legitimacy and approval to the government for them to initiate violence on your behalf. Yep. That's very important. They're just a third party in a sense. So, when Hobbes mentioned about, in a state of nature, without government, when a state of nature, there'd be chaos and anarchy and the sky would fall and life would be nasty, brutish, and short. Well, Mr. Hobbes, how would our current situation be anything but nasty and brutish and short? And how do you not have government is creating the chaos and so forth that Hobbes is worried about? He just misidentified the cause.
Yep, and I think it's another thing to kind of mention is voting encourages irresponsibility because when people rely on I don't like Obama, I can vote in 4 years and we can get this problem fixed. It's instead of actually, I know, Matt, it's ridiculous, but instead of actually like talking about issues and like thinking philosophically and things like that, people just wait until the time comes to go to the voting booth again and scratch it on a paper, or in the digital case, push a button, and then just don't think about it for another 4 years and just see what happens. Then whenever you don't like that guy, well, next year I'll go to the voting booth and I'll push this button and everything will be it'll just be fine. It'll be fine.
And Shane, you addressed something there that's very important. Kind of going back a little bit to the news cycle issue. Again, people don't have a good education, and they're not studying the reasons behind any of these political issues. And again, I don't want to get into any specifics tonight, but whatever the grievances are, they're not like serious like political scientists or studying political science and really understanding the underlying processes at work. They're just every once in a while, it's kind of like Groundhog Day a little bit. Like every couple of years, they pop their head up, look at the sun. It's a lot like that. So of course, what politicians will do is that they will promise free stuff. And the free stuff might be in the form of a welfare state handout, or it'll be in the sense of lucrative no-bid government contracts, usually like for the military-industrial complex and such.
Or political privileges.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's one of many ways, which would of course take too long to list tonight. But suffice it to say, they basically promise people free stuff. The voters not having good education, and since it is appealing to their more base desires, will go yep, and they scratch or they push something and like yep, I approve of this, or at least I approve of a version of this.
And then Bernie Sanders gets elected the open socialist gets elected president, has taken oath to the Constitution. God, it's
possible. But again, I mean, how would that be fundamentally any different from Bush Jr. or Ronald Reagan or Jimmy Carter or I mean, it's like pick these guys out of a hat. I mean, was Trent Lott really, I know it's a little bit of a dated reference, but was Trent Lott really a friend of liberty? I mean, come on, grow up. I mean, these guys are serious tyrants and rulers, man. And it's about time to kind of find your fortitude. And well, I was about to say I think it's important to reinvigorate the virtue of courage and find some internal fortitude and not subjugate yourself. And about reformism more generally, it's all about begging. So whether it's in the form of grassroots lobbying, whether it's in the form of voting, whether it's in the form of certain types of protesting and so forth, it's all about begging. Begging the rulers to please be nicer to everybody else.
Yep, it is. It's definitely begging. And let's go back to Free Keen here for a moment. On their voter info page, I mean, they are reformists. They do encourage voting. They link to this is the what I'm about to put in the chat is the 2014 version of their see if that pays fine. Okay, it's their 2014 version of the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance Liberty Rating. I'd like the listeners to pull that up. It's a very extensive document. They have to track every single bill, every single politician's voting record, and they have to give them a grade based off of their voting record, and then put together an extensive, no detail left out PDF. And just take a look at those opportunity costs. You know how long it took them to put together that document? Probably quite a long time. And Kyle, you mentioned this to me last night, and it was also something I didn't notice at first, but their own records show that, like, it shows you like what they like if they supported yay or nay, if they supported or were against something. It shows like what they wanted and then what the outcome was. And their own records show that they have completely failed in their stated goal. And they are all reformists, and they're openly admitting that they're failing, but somehow maybe just another 10 years of the Free State Project, and they're going to take it over by storm and turn it into turn the violently coercive government into one that loves liberty.
Again, that's the New Hampshire government. We ain't talking about federal government. We ain't talking about the United Nations, which is a wannabe global government. We're talking New Hampshire. Okay, this is like, some people, some of the American patriots, God bless them, will say things like, well, okay, the federal government's too large, but you should get involved in local government. Really? Well, that's what the Free Staters have tried to do since, 2006, 2007, thereabouts. They've been doing this for several years, And every time that NHLA has a position on a particular bill, the New Hampshire legislature, more often than not, takes the complete opposite position. So, if you can't lift, it's kind of going back to what Molyneux said. If you can't lift a coffee cup, for heaven's sake, stop talking about lifting a building or anything in between a coffee cup and a building at that point, because it's just ridiculous. Yeah.
And that's the perfect, but it's like they can't do anything with the New Hampshire state government. So let's just invade. We can't do this, but we can do this. That makes complete sense.
Oh, and one other thing I would like to add too. When Chris Cantwell was demonstrating how grassroots lobbying doesn't work, I think like every single time he actually openly carried his revolver into the Capitol building there in Concord, and of course there was the police didn't screw them because it was they've got open carry up there. Can you imagine doing that just about anywhere else?
Oh,
I know for certain I can't do it here in Austin because open carry, at least of pistols and revolvers, is explicitly banned. Okay, so if they don't tolerate it just in Texas in general, do you think they would appreciate, me or anyone else, trundling on up there wearing a pistol openly? I don't think so.
God, yeah. When I have to go to that court hearing next month for this recent last week event with encounter with a police extortionist, if you have to go through metal detectors there, but yeah, they would. I would probably be arrested. Let's just call it what it is. I think it's actually an Illinois compiled statute. So I'd probably be arrested. But so guys, from what you've heard tonight, please tell me that liberty rating isn't a major waste of time, effort, and patience. I mean, we've already covered enough on voting, but come on, look at that document. And that's just the document. Outside of that is their actions in getting their people into office and going to the voting booth and running the actual campaign and doing all of those things outside of the document itself. I think the document itself is enough to show you, so it's a massive opportunity cost. But, I don't know. Not much success to show for all of their time and effort spent, wouldn't you say, Kyle?
That's kind of been my whole argument these past 3 years, Shane.
So, I guess we're coming to about 9 minutes to the end of the broadcast. I think we'll probably go over a little bit, but so you this past week you finished the series altogether, and you wrote your capstone article and encapsulating all of the various aspects of reformism. So why don't you kind of give us a little bit of a summary here as far as what you found out in regards to reformism?
Sure. Well, I mean, here's the long and short of it. You cannot work inside of the system in order to change it from within. Again, you cannot infiltrate the mafia, turn into the United Way. You cannot infiltrate the KKK and turn into the NAACP. So if you can't do it even with lower risk type stuff like that, how can you possibly do it with even something that's even with a level or type of government that's as easily accessible as, say, for example, the one in Concord, New Hampshire? I mean, you just can't. And that's like best case scenario where you can openly carry in a revolver, apparently. And just in terms of accessibility, and I think that document you mentioned kind of elucidates that a bit. So, reformism doesn't work, and I would kind of really humbly suggest that everybody who cares about the quality of human liberty here in at least this portion of the North American continent to just give up the political means of making money already. Just give it up. Really, just give it up. I mean, I can't stress that enough. I mean, your freedom, the freedom of at least the next 2 generations, if not 3, considering the national debt, is dependent on you, specifically, you individually giving up the political means of making money. Now, having said that, I think what you should do, if anything, is explore the economic means of making money, as Albert Nock put it.
Yep, I would definitely agree, and I think I think a good little clip here to conclude is Naomi Wolf at the Free State Project, or at PorcFest actually, Free State Project event. This is 2014, correct?
Yes, it was last year.
Okay, yeah. I want to play this clip, and we'll talk after. Producer, please cue up clip 4.
That when there were news stories about surveillance in the United States, there were also news stories about surveillance in Germany, surveillance in France, surveillance in Australia, surveillance in New Zealand. This was the new normal. So, Edward Snowden may be our guy, but the telecoms are global. And entities like these transnational entities like the EU, right, are global, are a small group of actors now able to operate above nation states with no regard for nation states, right? I know you guys hate the state, but at this point we actually kind of need the state to fight. We should be the state. We need to be the state to fight against these people. No one needs to be the state. Okay.
And I think the reaction, I mean, the Free State Project is, at least, not to generalize the entire thing, but they are reformists. They are reformists. And they strongly opposed the statement by Naomi Wolf. I mean, that should pretty much tell you something, shouldn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, well, you know what? For people who are reformists and really want to kind of just really, how shall I say, be as consistent as is hypothetically possible and such, I would recommend perhaps they put together a reformist toolkit. And the toolkit would comprise, like how survivalists have like bug out bags and other people have similar things. Well, I think reformists should have a toolkit. And so for people who don't like what I've have had to say tonight, that's fine, but I would suggest that instead that you may want to consider this for your toolkit. So I suggest that you get a stack of postcards, because writing letters is pointless. Just put it on a postcard. A stack of postcards and a book of stamps. You can send that to letters to the editor and Congress critters and such. I suggest you print out at least 50 different copies of the Under One banner petition so you can hand it out to people. Because, of course, kind of like Mark Dice showed, if you just have a petition, you walk up and down those streets in California, you can get people to sign anything, frankly.
Yep.
You can put together a cardboard protest sign and wave it around for whatever you're worth. I know you can definitely put together some really cheap, easy custom ones from like ramen noodle box, or the cartons that ramen noodles come in. So you don't have to spend a lot of money for that, although some people do. Now, if you do get in trouble because you're protesting or doing whatever else, well, you should probably consider putting an attorney on retainer. But because people can't represent themselves in court, at least they refuse to learn how to. But then, of course, you also may want to maybe consider a nascent legal defense fund and then beg people to, so you can socialize your costs onto them, of course, because that's so responsible, as you well know. And while you're at it, get a copy of all of the election laws. And, also the civil laws, too, when you want to sue people. And make sure to get it for your own respective province. I mean state government. I mean province. I mean state government. And then as well as the feds. Because, suing people in elections is what's going to free people. Don't forget your video cameras. And not just one video camera. Do what Luke Rudowski did and get a whole rig of video cameras and spend like $5,000 or more on camera equipment. So you can go cop blocking. And don't forget to put a police scanner on your rig, kids. And also for your reformist toolkit, make sure to get a whole batch, preferably 100 or more of those jury nullification flyers, because, of course, you won't always want to risk a jury tampering charge, because that's good, sound strategy, don't you know? And then, of course, the most important part of any reformist toolkit, the high, holy, sacred, thou shalt not be questioned voter registration card. Because, of course, it's going to be a little hard to gather together your batch of democracy commandos to go and grassroots lobby your Congress critters if you're not registered voters. And of course, it's a badge of honor. Like, look, I'm tax cattle. See, I have a voter registration card. So that is the reformist toolkit, which with people who disagree with what I've said tonight, that's fine. Put together a reformist toolkit and at least try and be consistent with your own hyperbolic nonsense.
That is too perfect. That is too perfect and just way too accurate. Way too accurate.
So, Shane, if you don't mind, I would like to mention something for people who have taken what I've said tonight seriously. I would like to address that, if you don't mind.
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so here's what we're dealing with. Now, there's some other things that didn't really make it into the series, but is worth mentioning very briefly here before I get to what I do recommend people to do who do take what I have to say tonight seriously and so forth, which is that some people suggest things like an Article 5 convention. They suggest fraternization with, the bluecoats. Some people even want to secede. But I would suggest that there are alternatives for those political means that do not do that. I know the Shire Society, had their own declaration of sorts, but as a new social contract. But I would suggest a declaration of dissolution of government would be a lot better. People want to fraternize with the bluecoats. Well, there is such a thing as ostracism. Again, anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Look up the hearsay rules when you get a chance. Fraternization is hazardous to your health, even if you're a frothing at the mouth statist. And then regarding secession, well, that's more of the political means. Why don't actually do what the founders did and set up committees of safety already? It's not that difficult. But unfortunately, not many American patriots know about committees of safety despite educational efforts over recent years. So here's what I'm getting at. Here's the actual list. The first thing it's really two things I'm suggesting. The first of which is go on political field trips. In fact, Shane, you just finished your circuit of political field trips, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. It consists of going to I went to a McLean County board meeting, and then let me say this first. Obviously, as you can tell by the broadcast tonight, we are not reformists. We're against that. So if you were to actually go about and do these political field trips, it should not be with the intention of actually going there to try to influence or change or anything like that. What it should be is to, I guess you could call like a watchdog thing, only you're only doing this once. You would go to like the legislature in your area, the judicial. I did 2 judicial. Actually, I'll do 3 in 3 months, which will be interesting. But the jury summons, I witnessed a criminal court proceeding, and then I'll have to go for the actual ticket I'm facing. But yeah, go on political field trips, and whether your cup of tea is writing an article, whether it's a YouTube video, whatever it may be, go witness government in its own natural habitat. Just go watch that. And I think, at least for me, when I was going from my minarchist, minimal statism to my anarchist stage, that definitely assisted me. Because once you witness these people in their own natural habitats, it can pretty much repulse you from any idea of government in general. So if you're if you're one of the people that's kind of just hovering on like you're riding the fence on minarchism to an actual free society, I'd recommend that to be one of the first things you should start doing, and that will kind of solidify where you're leaning towards. So yeah, go to legislature, judicial. Obviously, in the enforcement branch, the cops, that's dangerous, and you don't want to try to get pulled over. That's stupid. So don't do that. You'll probably get pulled over anyways, like I did, so you still have that enforcement branch. But yeah, I definitely recommend political field trips. And if you do political field trips, submit them to Liberty Under Attack, and we will put them up. We'll put them up on our site for you, because that is a very important aspect of this entire thing. So go ahead, Kyle. Sorry for the...
And that's kind of the idea. You're right about the natural habitat. And so, and again, just go once. Don't lobby the government agents there. Just observe, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, and watch how they treat each other and so forth. And again, keep it to like either county government or municipal government. Go to one meeting of the legislative branch, go to the judicial branch, and just sit in on court cases in like the spectators area. And then to round out the circuit, go to a reformist organization meeting of some kind. The LP are pretty prolific just about everywhere. If there's some other type of more regional or even local reformist group, go to that too. And again, keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, maybe even talk to some people at the reformist organization.
Don't talk in the judicial or the legislative.
Try not to.
Talking.
Try not to.
You can. Yeah.
Yes, and whereas I would suggest dress conservatively for those. The reformist one you can kind of be a little bit more lax on. But the idea generally is political field trips, just so that you understand. Again, no theory involved, and better, it's a personal experience, or at least in the sense of empirically understanding. This is how government is nearby where you are. This is how it operates. This is what they're doing. You don't even need to take my word for it or anyone else's, because you yourself went and observed how they acted. So that's the first thing I'd say. And then the second thing is, and Shane, I know you've been looking forward to this, canceling voter registration.
Yep. And producer, if you could show image 1 for, 15 seconds, and then show image 2. But yeah, Kyle informed me that he canceled his voter registration there in Texas. And since I was, I stopped voting. I only voted one time, and I didn't want to vote again. So I was like, oh yeah, let me know how to do that here. So we kind of went through and figured that out, and I actually canceled mine here in Illinois, in the communist state of Illinois. I think that's probably the first thing that can kind of free you. A lot of these things start individually, withdrawing consent. as much as you possibly can. I did want to plug for those of you in any state. There's 38 states that I have the exact citation, the exact legal citations for how to go about canceling your voter registration. And if I don't have the exact citation, some of these states actually give you a form that you can fill out. Some of these state governments, so they make it easy. But if you go to libertyunderattack.com, there's a tab called Cancel Your Voter Registration, and you go there. You can open up the PDF, see if I have one for your state. If I don't, which there's about 11 I've been able to come up with, then just shoot me an email and we'll work on that together. But I do think that's probably the most important first step in kind of withdrawing consent. Would you agree, Kyle?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't claim, I would suggest you can't claim to wanting to fight the beast that is the state government, at least as it is today anyway, and still be on the rolls, as it were, as is like, oh, I'm a registered voter, that means I'm important or whatever. Because remember, the government does keep statistics on how many people are registered voters, how many voters actually turned out, casted a ballot and such. So if anything, the idea of getting the voter turnout lower is good. And then I would even suggest further, even getting the registered voter numbers lower would also be good as well. Mm-hmm. And the government does provide a way out. It's called canceling voter registration. I was able to do it in Texas a couple of years ago. So I have the liberty to not care about elections anymore. I have no stake in them. And whatever, so-called laws or policies or whatever those who imagine themselves to be my rulers decide to try and impose upon me and everyone else, well, there are decisions I'm going to have to make when rubber meets the road. Because quite frankly, let's be honest here, the only thing that matters when it comes to government is enforcement. I hope everybody understands that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Kyle, I guess concluding thoughts to leave the listeners with.
Reformism doesn't work. Stop using the political means. And I guess the other part of it is that, you're right, Shane. The answer to reformism really is direct action. And, of course, direct action really does require some examination on its own merits at a later time. So, again, I would really like to, thank you for having me on. And I guess laissez-faire.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Kyle. We definitely appreciate you taking the time. So, Matt, what do you have to conclude for this broadcast?
Reform apocalypse is the end result of reformism. It's hell on earth, the obliteration of overnight life, and the extinction of its inhabitants, all in one sweep, by adhering to the authority of the state. Instead of seeking political answers through congressional authorities, risking personal privacy and letters to editors, petitioning to rulers who won't listen, lobbying to interests who serve the highest bidder, watching the psychological mousetrap that calls itself news, debates very rarely produce anything fruitful, legal defense funds aren't worth it unless you're fully prepared for the repercussions, suing the government is just a horrible joke, jury nullification isn't a one-size-fits-all, running for public office is just plain amoral on its face. In the words of J.R.R. Tolkien, the most improper job of any man, even saints, who at any rate were at least unwilling to take it on, is bossing other men. No one in a million is fit for it, and least of all, those who seek the opportunity. That's your Rand Pauls, your Hillary Clintons, your Jeb Bushes, so-called representatives, all of the power-thirsty candidates in any election. Filming agents of status coercion results in negative opportunity cost, infringing on individual life and property. Protesting fails as an act of reformism, specifically when it pleads the government for special favors, when it acknowledges the authority of the state. Government doesn't have to be the salvation to resolve issues faced by a society, whether they're mundane, controversial, or otherwise. Won't you agree?
Of course. Of course.
And to finish off, voting is a means of reinforcing the extortion racket to your personal political preferences on other people. If you wouldn't want it done to yourself, you'll be right to ask yourself, why am I doing it to other people? I can only hope you've got a moral compass to answer that problem yourselves. Let's take on economic means, or direct action, to fulfill our desires of being a free people throughout America and the world. Replacing one gang of violent assholes via political means, so-called representatives, within the gang of violent assholes will never secure liberty. The only person who can represent you is yourself.
Indeed, indeed. So, we've certainly covered quite a lot of material tonight, which is always the case when we have Kyle on. Kyle has already left you with his concluding thoughts, and I agree 100%. I'd like to conclude with my brief introduction and into my reformist activities. When I was 19, I voted for the first and last time. The same year, I attended overpasses for Obama's impeachment protest. Following year, I held an informational protest against the war on drugs. Other than my brief stint of trying to defund the corporation and restore constitutional governments, that is the extent of my reformist activities. There are 2 points that have already been proven that I'd like to reiterate from my own personal experiences. 1, it was a waste of time and was ineffective, and 2, it was a waste of money, as we spent quite a bit of money on ink for flyers that people probably threw away when they passed the first trash can. Since then, I've taken a couple of crucial steps in my development that have helped me individually become freer. First one, as we discussed, was when I canceled my voter registration. The second was the road to my current anarchist beliefs. Final points I'd like to make are this. 1, when you partake in reformist activities, you are only giving legitimacy and credibility to the most dangerous superstition. That is, the belief in authority and government. The acknowledgement of those two things themselves only fuels the beast known as the state, and their power and control only grows. 2, when the political means are so heavily emphasized as they are all over the world, it takes attention away from the one true solution that we have to restore liberty, and that is the economic means. More simplified, direct action. I know we probably piss a lot of people off with this broadcast, and that's good. To be frank about it, you deserve a slap upside the head. I know I got mine too, and it really was not pleasant. If we're going to be honest and successful in restoring our liberty, reformism must end. After tonight's broadcast, and also Kyle's work on the anthology and audiobook, there is no excuse anymore. I'd like to point you all to the Agorist Primer audiobook that Kyle and I did. If you want to learn more about the economic means, this is a great place to start and is available on the LUA YouTube channel as well as the main Spoken Discourses page on the website. I hope this broadcast will make you think deeply about your beliefs, philosophical values, and the action you take in defense of those and freedom in general. On that note, we will sign out. I'd like to thank Kyle for joining us this evening. He surely accomplished something tremendous with this one. Make sure to check out libertyunderattack.com for our newest articles and also for the anthology and audiobook that we discussed tonight, which are available exclusively through LUA. That's libertyunderattack.com. We'll be joined next Sunday. We'll be joined next Sunday by Cal Molinet from Liberate RVA, and we'll be discussing peaceful parenting. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. In Liberty.
Thanks for listening to FPRN. Don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to start your own show with FPRN, advertise with us, or donate to the network or to your favorite shows, check out our website at www.fprnradio.com.
Welcome to the House of Lies, where the sun blackness does not shine. You're a slave.